Yes, and today we continue Johnson's Life of the Poets, or rather Boswell's account of Johnson's Life of the Poets. And today it's the life of Waller we start with. In the life of Waller, Johnson gives a distinct and animated narrative of public affairs in that variegated period with strong yet nice touches of character. And having a fair opportunity to display his political principles, does it with an unqualified manly confidence, and satisfied his readers how nobly he might have executed a Tory history of his country. So easy is his style in these lives that I do not recollect more than three common or learned words. One, when giving an account of the approach of Waller's mortal disease, he says, he found his legs grown tumid. By using the expression his legs swelled, he would have avoided this, and there would have been no impropriety in it being followed by the interesting question to his physician, what that swelling meant. Another, when he mentions that Pope had emitted proposals, when published or issued, would have been more readily understood. And a third, when he calls Orrery and Dr. Delany, writers both undoubtedly veracious, when true, honest, or faithful might have been used. Yet it must be owned that none of these are hard or too big words, that custom would make them seem as easy as any others, and that the language is richer and capable of more beauty of expression by having a greater variety of synonyms, or cinnamon. His dissertation upon the unfitness of poetry for the awful subjects of our holy origin, that's awful, A-W-E, awful, though I do not entirely agree with him, has all the merit of originality within common force and reasoning. And he has various readings in the life of Waller, and these are different little edits that Johnson did. So at first he had consented to the insertion of their names, and he changed that to consented to their own nomination. And then he had originally, after a fine of £10,000, changed that to paying a fine of £10,000. Congratulating Charles II on his coronation was changed to congratulating Charles II on his recovered right. He that has flattery ready for all whom the vicissitudes of the world happen to exalt must be confessed to degrade his powers was changed to he that has flattery ready for all whom the vicissitudes of the world happen to exalt must be scorned as a prostituted mine. A little stronger. The characters by which Waller intended to distinguish his writings are elegance, and dignity was changed to the characters of which Waller intended to distinguish his writings are sprightliness and dignity. Blossoms to be valued only as they fetch fruits was changed to blossoms only as they foretell fruits. Images such as the superficies of nature easily supplies were changed to images such as the superficies of nature readily supplies. His applications are sometimes too remote and inconsequential was changed to some applications may be thought too remote and inconsequential. So he kind of reduced that a little bit. His images are sometimes confused was changed to his images are not always distinct. Against his life of Milton, the hounds of Whiggism have opened in full cry. But of Milton's great excellence as a poet, where shall we find such a blazon as by the hand of Johnson? I shall select only the following passage concerning Paradise Lost. This is quoting from Johnson now. Fancy can hardly forbear to conjecture with what temper Milton surveyed the silent progress of his work, and marked his reputation stealing its way in a kind of subterraneous current through fear and silence. I cannot but conceive him calm and confident, little disappointed, not at all dejected, relying on his own merit with steadily consciousness, and waiting without impatience the vicissitudes of opinion and the impartiality of a future generation. Wow. Indeed, even Dr. Towers, who may be considered as one of the warmest zealots of the Revolution Society itself, allows that Johnson has spoken in the highest terms of the abilities of that great poet, and has bestowed on his principal poetical compositions the most honorable econicums, encomiums. See an essay on the life of character and writings of Dr. Samuel Johnson, London, 1787, which is very well written, making a proper allowance for the democratical bigotry of its author, whom I cannot, however, but admire for his liberality in speaking thus of my illustrious friend, quoting here. He possessed extraordinary powers of understanding, which were much cultivated by study, and still more by meditation and reflection. His memory was remarkably retentive, his imagination uncommonly vigorous, and his judgment keen and penetrating. He had a strong sense of the importance of religion, his piety was sincere, and sometimes ardent, and his zeal for the interest of virtue was often manifested in his conversation and in his writings. The same energy which was displayed in his literary productions was exhibited also in his conversation, which was very striking and instructive. And perhaps no man ever equaled him for nervous and pointed repartees. His dictionary, his moral essays, and his productions in polite literature will convey useful instruction and elegant entertainment as long as the language in which they are written shall be understood. That a man who venerated the church and monarchy as Johnson did should speak with a just abhorrence of Milton as a politician, or rather as a daring foe to good policy, was surely to be expected. And to those who censor him, I would recommend his commentary on Milton's celebrated complaint of his situation, when by the lenity of Charles II, a lenity of which, as Johnson well observes, the world has had perhaps no other example, he, who had written in justification of the murder of his sovereign, was safe under an act of oblivion. No sooner is he safe than he finds himself in danger. I guess this is quoting Johnson here, I'm guessing. No sooner is he safe that he finds himself in danger, fallen on evil days and evil tongues, and with darkness and with danger compassed around. This darkness, had his eyes been better employed, had undoubtedly deserved compassion, but to add the mention of danger was ungrateful and unjust. He was fallen indeed on evil days. The time was come in which regicides could no longer boast their wickedness. But of evil tongues for Milton to complain required impudence at least equal to his other powers. Milton, whose warmest advocates must allow that he never spared any asperity of reproach or brutality of insolence. End of quoted part. I have, indeed, often wondered how Milton, an acrimonious and surly Republican, a man who in his domestic relations was so severe and arbitrary, and whose head was filled with the hardest and most dismal tenets of Calvinism, should have been such a poet, should not only have written with sublimity, but with beauty, and even gaiety, should have exquisitely painted the sweetest sensations by which our nature is capable, amidst the delicate raptures of connubial love, nay, seem to be animated with all the spirits of revelry. It is a proof that in the human mind the departments of judgment and imagination, perception and temper, may sometimes be divided by strong partitions, and that the light and shade of the same character may be kept so distinct as never to be blended. Mr. Malone thinks it is a rather proof that he felt nothing of those cheerful sensations which he has described, that on these topics it is the poet and not the man who writes. In the Life of Milton, Johnson took occasion to maintain his own and the general opinion of the excellence of rhyme over blank verse in English poetry, and quotes this apposite illustration of it by an ingenious critic that it seems to be verse only to the eye. One of the most natural instances of the effect of blank verse occurred in the late Earl of Hopperton. His lordship observed one of his shepherds poring on the fields upon Milton's Paradise Lost, and having asked him what book it was, the man answered, "Ain't please your lordship, this is a very odd sort of author. He would fain rhyme, but cannot get at it." It's funny, I guess. The gentleman whom he thus characterizes, this is back to that, before that footnote, is, as he told Mr. Seward, Mr. Locke of Norbury Park in Surrey, whose knowledge and taste in the fine arts is universally celebrated, with whose elegance of manners the writer of the present work has felt himself much impressed, and to whose virtues a common friend, possibly Malone, a footnote tells us, who had known him long and is not much addicted to flattery, gives the highest testimony. What was the point of that again? In the life of Milton, Johnson took occasion to maintain his own and quotes this apposite illustration by the ingenious critic. Okay. I don't know. I don't know what the point of that was. Anyway, here's some edits for this section. Various readings in the life of Milton. I cannot find any meaning, but that this which his most begotten advocates can give was changed to, I cannot find any meaning, but this which even kindness and reverence can give. A little different. Perhaps no man ever wrote so much and praised so few was changed to, scarcely any man ever wrote so much and praised so few. A certain rescue from oblivion was changed to a certain preservative from oblivion. I like the original better, I think. And let me not be censured for this digression as contracted or paradoxical was changed to, let me not be censured for this digression as pedantic or paradoxical. Socrates rather was of opinion that what we had to learn was how to obtain and communicate happiness was changed to, and this is very different. Socrates rather was of the opinion that what we had to learn was how to do good and avoid evil. A little different than obtain and communicate happiness, arguably. Its elegance, who can exhibit, was changed to, its elegance is less attainable. I could, with pleasure, expatiate upon the masterly execution of the life of Dryden, which we have seen was one of Johnson's literary projects at an early period, in which it is remarkable that, after desisting from it, from a supposed scantiness of materials, he should, at an advanced age, have exhibited so amply. His defense of that great poet against the illiberal attacks upon him, as if his embracing the Roman Catholic communion had been a time-serving measure, is a piece of reasoning at once able and candid. Indeed, Dryden himself in his Hind and Panther hath given such a picture of his mind that they who know the anxiety for repose as to the awful AWE, subject of our state beyond the grave, though they may think his opinion ill-founded, must think charitably of his sentiment, and here quoting Dryden, but gracious God, how well dost thou provide for erring judgments and an erring guide. Thy throne is darkness in the abyss of light, a blaze of glory that forbids the sight. Oh, teach me to believe thee thus concealed, and search no farther than thyself revealed. But he alone for my director take, whom thou hast promised never to forsake. My thoughtless youth was winged with vain desires, my manhood long misled by wandering fires. Followed false lights, and when their glimpse was gone, my pride struck out new sparkles of her own. Such was I, such by nature still I am. Be thine the glory, and be mine the shame. Good life be now my task, my doubts are done. What more could shock my faith than 3 in 1? In drawing Dryden's character, Johnson is given, though I suppose unintentionally, some touches of his own. Thus, to quote Johnson, the power that predominated in his intellectual operations was rather strong reason than quick sensibility. Upon all occasions that were presented, he studied rather than felt, and produced sentiments not such as nature enforces, but meditation supplies. With the simple and elemental passions as they spring separate in the mind, he seems not much acquainted. He is, therefore, with all his variety of excellence, not often pathetic, and had so little sensibility of the power of effusions purely natural that he did not esteem them in others. It may indeed be observed that in all the numerous writings of Johnson, whether in prose or verse, and even in his tragedy, of which the subject is the distress of an unfortunate princess, there's not a single passage that ever drew a tear. He doesn't make you cry. He makes you think. He doesn't make you cry. And now, various readings of the life of Dryden. We had originally, the reason of this general perusal, Addison has attempted to find in the delight which the mind feels in the investigation of secrets, was changed to, the reason of this general perusal, Addison has attempted to derive from the delight which the mind feels in the investigation of secrets. His best actions are but convenient of wickedness was his best actions are but convenient wickedness was changed to his best actions are but inability of wickedness. Changes a great deal. When once he had engaged himself in disputation, matter flowed in on either side was changed to when once he had engaged himself in disputation, thoughts flowed in on either side. The abyss of an unideal emptiness was changed to the abyss of an unideal vacancy. And these, like many other harlots, had his love, though not his approbation, was changed to these, like the harlots of other men, had his love, though not his approbation. He sometimes displays his knowledge with pedantic ostentation, was changed to he descends to display his knowledge with pedantic ostentation. And French words which were then used in conversation was changed to French words which had then crept into conversation, making them creepy little French words. Oh boy. Well, I guess I'm stopping for today because the next part is Pope. And as you can imagine, he has quite a lot to say about Pope. He freaking loves Pope. And I'd rather not break that up. And there's a awful long footnote I see here, too. So I'm just making sure. Where does the footnote begin? It's so long. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll find out tomorrow. And so will you if you're here. So until next time, bye from Boswell.